I'm now delighted to say that IB Europe has brought together a panel of industry leaders, experts from its Programmatic Trading Committee to explore the state of programmatic advertising landscape further. Our moderator for this is Lisa, RVP of Advertiser Solutions from PubMatic. I'm going to hand to Lisa now, but don't forget you can submit your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. We'll review your questions and put the selection to them to the panel at the end of the session. Over to you, Lisa.
Thanks so much, David, as I relearn how to use Zoom right now. Always a joy to go from panelist to just a listener to being a panelist and all that stuff. So thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really excited about this panel. So we can just jump right in, and I will start with the first question and have the panel introduce themselves and ask them what their initial thoughts are on the stats that were presented, which stat or fact resonated the most with them. And Wayne, I'm going to start with you.
Hey, good morning, Lisa. My name is Wayne Tassie. I am lead sales director for EMEA at DoubleVerify. I'll tell you the stat that probably resonated with me the most is programmatic video being worth 5.2 billion in Europe. I'd say this growth trend really mirrors what we as a company, DoubleVerify, are measuring across the ecosystem and aligns really with marketers' needs and expectations for advanced video metrics. This really moves us, I think, in a current state beyond viewability and more into the realm of attention, a set of privacy-friendly tools that provide really granular insight into user presence, user engagement, and ad presentation. These metrics around attention really allow brands to optimize their campaigns, even at creative levels, improving campaign performance and outcomes such as brand awareness and driving conversions.
Definitely. Thanks, Wayne, for that. Over to Alex. Thoughts on trends?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lisa. My name is Alex McGibbon, and I run the Client Solutions team for EMEA at Xaxis. And actually, a couple of things stood out to me. Video is definitely one of them, but for me, it was that split of programmatic to non-programmatic when you compare video to everything. So I think it was Daniel just mentioned 60% of video is already programmatic, which is 10% above, or approximately 10% above the total for everything. And I think that really highlights the strength of performance that we see programmatic video bring. So I think that's a really key point. And then additionally, there was one second thing, which was that continuing strong growth of programmatic audio. And whilst it is still small, and that does mean that there's still potential for significant growth over the coming years as more and more of the traditional audio starts to embrace programmatic and starts to add to that total. And I think that's really interesting, because then if you consider the potential omni-channel executions that we can do by connecting these channels and others as they continue to grow, I think that's a really interesting and exciting part of the industry.
Yeah, definitely. Hannah, over to you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Hannah O'Neill from Amobee, and I look after our agency partnerships across EMEA. I think for me, what stood out actually was, as well as the comments that you guys have already raised, the disparity of what's important to the advertiser versus the agency. I think although it's very understandable, I think it was quite a bigger disparity than I would have expected. The advertiser's need for premium inventory at scale has more than doubled year on year, while their cost of media has gone down in priority, so they're willing to pay more. For agencies, this went up a little bit, but predominantly, obviously, the focus was more naturally on operation efficiencies. So I think there's a learning there for us to have an education piece on the fact that these actually can be done together and brought together in an efficient way through programmatic trading, and they don't need to be viewed separately.
Definitely agree on that. And Menno, last but not least.
Hi, good afternoon. Hi, Menno. I'm heading up the north part of Europe for RTL AdConnect on digital sales. One of the things that stood out the most for me was the growth expectations for the coming period. Video growth of 40%. That's still very relevant, even if we already grew a lot. And brand safety, of course, something that we as RTL AdConnect, as broadcaster, are having. It's very important to us, but it's good to see that it is important for advertisers and agencies as well.
Thanks, Menno, for that. So looking at just the overall 2021 investment drivers, we saw a number of them, such as better access to premium, increase in the value of media, increase in operational efficiencies. What would you say is the main one or most exciting investment driver for programmatic? Wayne, I'll start with you again.
Thanks, Lisa. I think if I was to quote the IAB EU Attitudes to Programmatic Advertising Report 2021 that I know IAB released in October, programmatic and publisher direct were once strongly delineated. Programmatic buys meant real-time bidding through the open exchange, and publisher direct buys meant filling out an insertion order with each publisher on the media plan. But today, private marketplaces and programmatic guaranteed deals add flexibility to buys and blur the line between programmatic and publisher directs. Now, in my experience, this flexibility is going to become even more imperative as the bandwidth of programmatic channels continues to diversify. And adding to that, advertisers continue to look for far more personalized and customized solutions to reach their target audiences at scale. So I believe that investment in programmatic will continue to rise, especially on popular formats such as OTT and CTV, especially when it comes to premium non-tube video growth. So if you think about the granular controls for verification, including brand suitability standards that align with GARM and the 4AA's framework, and the return of cookieless technologies such as contextual targeting and unified 2.0 and emerging attention metrics previously mentioned, this will make investment in premium video increasingly attractive to marketers. I think brands expect constant and consistent measurement wherever they are investing, including BVOD and social and emerging platforms. So therefore, I would expect third-party verification to increase in these areas in the near future, primarily fueled by customer demand.
Thanks, Wayne, for that. Menno?
Sorry, yeah, I didn't understand the question. Lost the question for now.
Oh yeah, just more on the investment drivers. What's most exciting?
Sorry, yeah. So one of the investment drivers for us is definitely CTV. Wayne also mentioned. We see a high demand at the moment, driven by from the US to Europe for CTV. Connected to that, a broadcaster VOD. That is one of the most important things for video at the moment. We see that the social video part is getting a little bit smaller, especially on what mentioned before as well is the brand safety aspect of that. People want to have more grips on where and what they are showing, and more connection as well with the right audience during that specific broadcasting.
Great. Thanks so much for that. And on to the barriers. So talking about drivers and now looking at barriers. Advertisers, publishers, brand safety is back at the top for 2021. Another key barrier is adoption of programmatic trading that we saw was hiring people. I know David just mentioned that. What would you say is the main or most concerning barrier to investment? And Hannah, I will start with you.
I think I've gone with two, both the resource issue and the concern of transparency. I think they're both rather key and span more than one of the groups. I think resource is an issue, as is the lead time for retraining people from one role to another. And I think at the moment, it's very clear that all of us are looking for experts in the key emerging areas. And of course, that's going to dry up quite quickly, which I think we're seeing. So I think maybe we need to look outside of standard job roles and look at the wider disciplines and how retraining within those wider disciplines could be potentially quicker than cross-training internally. I think with regards to transparency, it links back to my last point really about how we view programmatic, old stigmas that might still exist. So it's not the place for remnant. It is a place for automation and programmatically traded investment. And we are embracing the premium inventory, and with that shortening supply chains. So we're certainly getting closer to publishers and broadcasters at Amobee. And I think with that, it should alleviate some of these concerns quite considerably.
Definitely. Alex, over to you. Thoughts on barriers?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Hannah's comments there. I would say also, though, that I don't think it's too controversial to say that issue with advertisers having a clear understanding of the impact of programmatic is absolutely essential. And I don't necessarily think that the increase in people seeing that as a barrier is unexpected, given the changes that have happened over the past year or so from a privacy standpoint, Apple's iOS changes, obviously the ongoing cookieless discussions and how we're going to navigate those changes. It really feels like an already complex industry is getting only more. So I think what that means is that first of all, we have to make sure that we can show that clear and measurable impact, but additionally that we can do it in a very easy to digest way, and not just so we can highlight our positive impact overall, but also to ensure that message on talent, that we're going to have new talent entering the industry, and it needs to be easier for them to understand why we do things the way that we do. So yes, I think making that really clear is really important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So just now moving on to the overall operational models and trends that we've seen. In-housing, still the hot topic. 50% of advertisers have in-housed operations in 2021 compared to only 20 in 2020. The hybrid model is also evolving and having doubled from 16% to 38%. What would you say is driven this change, and how do you think this is going to evolve over the next 12 months? So Menno, I will start with you on this.
That's a very good question. What does it originate from? And I think that the varies per agency, per advertiser, per in-housing client. Sometimes it can be a mistrust of the situation itself, but more or less I think it's driven by the importance of programmatic media buying, the sheer growth of it, which makes it feasible for companies to actually do it themselves, and also the technology makes it possible actually to do it yourself. It's now feasible for everybody to have an Amobee, have a Google account, have a YouTube account, and actually participate in this programmatic landscape. So that's one of the most important things. I think that is knowledge and accessibility of platforms. And indeed, we have a large number of clients that would do it more and more themselves on a high scale and a high level of excellence, actually.
Great, thanks so much. Hannah, over to you.
Thank you. I think I'd like to dig into that 50% stat a little bit more. That seems really high, especially in the time frame that it's shown. But so my question would be, is this fully in-house? I think what we're seeing is a lot of hybrid or halfway in-house models, and that the client likely has access to the platforms in which they use because they want to use the technology that they're investing in. But there's very much a kind of joint ownership with the agency, and a lot of it is still agency-led. I think that the clients that do take it on in its entirety need to be significantly large for the scale of the operation that is needed to keep this evolving at the pace that it needs to.
Definitely, they are very high numbers. So I agree with you on that one, but it seems like it's a trend. Over to Alex.
Yeah, I would definitely like to look at that raw data, because whilst I think the trend is definitely that direction, the numbers are quite dramatic. But I think that for advertisers to have in-house talent with great knowledge and understanding of programmatic, that can only help everybody. It's going to help the industry grow. It's going to make it better for the industry at large. But of course, the thing that it does is it makes it more difficult for everyone to find talent. And we've already talked about that as a barrier. And that means, again, we need to renew our focus on training and attracting people to the industry. And I think for those of us that have been in the industry for a while, we understand how complex it can be. We know that it's complicated, but we also need to remember that for people entering programmatic completely fresh, it can be really daunting to get to grips with even small parts of what we do. So ensuring that we're onboarding properly, we're training people well and in depth is essential. And I think given that this complexity and that cyclical nature of in-housing, I would probably expect more hybrid approaches in the future.
Definitely. And I do always like to plug in the IAB training, Europe's IAB training videos that they do. I think they are a wonderful tool to help train anyone who is new to the industry. Because I remember when I started, it was not that easy to understand all of the acronyms that we all love so much. So just looking at now, moving to the growth areas. So a lot of excitement around things like CTV. I know audio is a big one, out of home. In terms of future confidence in programmatic, what are your predictions for the next 12 months? Wayne, I will start with you on this.
Thanks, Lisa. I do love a prediction question. I'll keep this short and sweet because I know that we're rounding up. I'd say for me, attention metrics and contextual targeting, because they're going to really drive forward video growth over the next 12 months. I think when we think about attention, it's really emerged as a vital yet increasingly scarce resource. It's important that marketers have a reliable way to measure and capitalize on consumer attention without the need of cookies, which I know incidentally is going to be the next panel, which I'm quite looking forward to. So we'll see if they agree.
Thanks so much, Wayne. Alex, over to you.
So yeah, I think in terms of predictions, it is tricky to know specifically, but I really do get a feeling that all channels are growing programmatically. I mentioned earlier on audio and video in particular, and that does give rise to this possibility of more omni-channel executions and strategies. And that when we're working with more channels, it brings us more data. And again, when we're talking about, obviously we're losing data from cookies, but we're gaining data from contextual and other areas. So we're gaining yet more data. And again, it all comes back to that word I've used a few times, complexity. So it's more complexity. And that's really going to require efficient ways of working. And I think this is really where artificial intelligence comes into play. And it really is its strength. It connects data. It enhances our understanding of this complexity. And using AI across channels allows us to connect this complex data with media, with creative executions. I'm really hoping, and I guess predicting, that we see some fantastic results from that in the coming year or so.
Great, thanks so much for that. Hannah, over to you.
Thank you. Totally agree, Alex. Couldn't agree more. For us at Amobee, we are also firmly betting on the broadcast board and CTV areas, like many are right now. This has obviously been driven by the rise of consumption in the OTT platforms over and above just linear, as well as having better access to data sets to target and measure across both these channels and the rest of the buy, to Alex's point, and the omni-channel vision. So finally, we've got the foundations here in EMEA that have only been available in the US to this point. So it's very exciting. And of course, this is twinned with broadcasters leaning in more to automation. So it's come together nicely. And also, I naturally hope that digital out of home has a good year, considering people are now out of home. So,
yes, and Menno.
Yeah, Hannah, you stole my thunder there, but I couldn't agree more with you. It's best we are gonna see a lot of more broadcasters going into the programmatic sphere, unlocking the traditional television to OTT and bringing that to the programmatic or digital environment at least, and dipping their toes in EMEA parts of the digital spends.
Thanks, guys. And I guess the last question to wrap this up, we know it was I'd like to say the decade of mobile. What will be the key theme for 2022? And Wayne, I will start with you.
I'm just going to call it out because everyone's saying it, CTV. I just hope we do actually see the growth in Europe that we've been talking about for so long, because obviously in the States, it is a big part of media investment at the moment. And we talk about it a lot in Europe, but the scale just isn't there yet. But 2022, year of CTV.
Definitely. All right, Alex, over to you.
Yeah, my theme would be video, but that would include all things CTV, etc., etc. So yeah, everything under the video umbrella. I think given the stats we've seen, given what everybody said, yeah, that's the clear theme for me.
Got it. Okay. Hannah?
I'm going to group it together in TV-led automation.
Okay.
But yes, one and the same.
Yep. I see a trend. I have a feeling I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, indeed. It's going to be television indeed, and CTV, BVOD. The broadcasters, those will be the main drivers of growth for video for 2022.
Definitely. All right, great. Thank you guys so much for your time. This was a great panel to host.